Welcome back to another episode of the Buffalo Happy Hour. Mike, what's going on?
Derek, we traveled downtown, and I am currently making my wife extremely jealous because we are in one of our favorite restaurants in the city. So let's start with introductions, titles, that formality things, and then we'll dive into the history of where we are.
Sounds good. My name is Michael Dimmer. I am the owner of Marble and Rye.
I'm Megan Lee. I am the bar manager of Marble and Rye and sort of maitre d' a little bit.
And also sort of business partner at this point in our lives. So,
Yeah. So the name Marble and Rye, where does that come from?
it's very simple. Meat and whiskey, like marbling in like a steak or something along those lines. And then rye being from like a straight rye whiskey. It was my former business partner, Christian. It was just like a weird little brainstorming night where we were talking about stuff before we opened, about 2 years before we opened, just texting back and forth, probably like smoking weed and drinking beer separately at like our own apartments. And the next morning he was like, I think I got it. And he was like, Marble and Rye. And I was like, all right, why? And then he kind of elaborated a little more, and it just stuck. I felt like it worked. It's one of those things where you're like, yeah, it's easy. It rolls off the tongue. Like it's easy to remember kind of deal. And then my older brother, who is responsible for our branding and our website and all that stuff, he was sort of the final test with it. And when he loved it, because he's, a branding agent and a marketing guy, we were like, all right, well, that takes care of it. That's it. So, and then it did sort of, define who we were as a restaurant when we were first opening. It was sort of the plan to operate locally, not necessarily just be meat focused in terms of like Marble, but also a whiskey bar. So it kind of fit with what we were trying to do.
Are there any other bars around here or restaurants that fit that same mold, or how did you figure out that you wanted to open this type of a place?
Yeah, I think there definitely are, even I think more so nowadays with some newer places that have opened, be it Prescott Provisions or, a handful of them in Nezio as well. I know that they try and operate as locally as possible, but that was always sort of a thing that I was very connected to in terms of cooking, working in restaurants my whole life, going to a 2-year culinary program. I sort of knew that, the game that I wanted to play was going to be as like moral and ethical about it as possible, start to build a connection with our local farmers who now some of them are like family to me. So that was always very important for me. And I think that the whiskey side of it came from my former business partner, Christian, who always had a love of it, has Cicerone training when he worked at Blue Monk and really started diving into whiskeys that they were bringing in there. And it just kind of, those were like sort of our two separate reasons to come together with it, I think.
Sure.
Yeah.
What was the process like in finding a location, going through permitting and everything else with the city?
Pretty wild for the first time, because we had no idea. Like we didn't know what we were getting ourselves into. We had some idea prior to opening the restaurant. We had owned a food truck here in the city, so we were a part of all the crazy food truck like debate stuff that was going on. Going down to Common Council meetings and things like that. hearing Tucker Curtin talk shit about all the food trucks and tell the city that it was going to be horrible, and trying to write his own food truck law. Like, we were there to like combat all that stuff. We were the 10th truck on the road in Buffalo that was like licensed to be on the road. So we kind of had an understanding that like, okay, we know how like the city operates now. We know how the state operates a little bit now, and we know there's going to be a lot of hoops to jump through. But it was a lot of phone calls to other friends that are in the industry that own restaurants, a lot of, we don't know what the fuck we're doing, a little bit of that kind of stuff. But for the most part, it was pretty time consuming, just trying to learn all that on your own while you're also trying to build a restaurant,
I feel like it's kind of the common theme is almost no one knows what to do, how to do it, or what they're doing in general. And then it just works because you don't stop working on it.
Sure. I think you see guys, certain people like, Dave Schutte, for example, here in the city, it continues to open up really great, fantastic places because he went through it that first time and figured out what the process is. I like to think now I know what I would have to do if I were like, let's go open up another restaurant. But I guess maybe it depends a little bit on how much this industry affects you, because I don't have any desire to go and open up another restaurant right now, even though I have the knowledge on how to do it and make it easier this time, So, yeah, I think there's guys that they know how to do it and they're going to continue to do it, but you're definitely right. I think you're sort of jumping in a little bit blind. And also, depending on your program and what your place is and what it's going to be and where you're located and how big it is and if there's apartments upstairs, like everything's a little different all the time. The city's going to react to things differently. They're not going to want you to do this thing that you think defines you and is really cool because they're like, we don't really have a law for that, so you just can't do it. And you're like, all right, fine. So it's a little different every time too, I'd say.
I feel like you did have the advantage of like Toutant around the corner opened like 3 months before.
I think it was.
We did. So they, I think, were really like neighborly and had some tips and advice, people to talk to and sort of what to expect from what I hear. Anyway.
Big shout out to James Roberts. He still to this day is like, he'll text me suggestions on stuff. Every once in a while, it's like, hey, don't forget, like quarterly taxes are coming up soon and stuff like that. Like he's sort of like a bit, in my eyes at least, like a bit of a godfather in our industry. He's just been doing it so long. He's the most professional guy I know. So he's always been a huge help to us.
So did everyone's dad.
Oh yeah, man, he's fucking great.
Yeah. So did this spot just open up and you're like, this is the perfect spot for it, or what was it like finding the actual building?
Our lawyer found this, actually.
Okay.
Christian and I had looked at a handful of other locations, and this came up pretty quickly, actually, in our search. It was like maybe a month in, we were checking out some other spots, checking out other places that were available, and that was another big part of it, is we had never leased anything like commercially ever, so that was like a whole process too. But our lawyer and close friend of ours, Bob Carbone, called us, the owners of this building. It's Lamparelli Construction, and they were remodeling his home at the time. And he was like, I think I have a perfect spot for what you guys want to do. We came and looked at it. It was an old paint company, Ellicott Paint Company, and it was vacant for about 25 years. So, I mean, from where we're sitting back was legit dirt floors because there's no basement underneath it, so it was just dirt. This place was just, the ceiling was falling apart. It was a disaster. It was a full overhaul, and at the time, the company Lamparelli that owns the building, they were remodeling and doing apartments directly above us. So I took the first apartment with my now wife and lived directly above here as they were finishing the rest of the apartments upstairs, and then started the construction down here. And then we kind of had them press pause. We tend to do this. We had them press pause at a certain point because we didn't want them to go too far, because then we had to pay them for it. And my former business partner, myself, our parents, and other friends kind of did a lot of the finishings. We did like the walk-in cooler downstairs. We built the bar, the frame, all that stuff. We did, they took it to what we call vanilla box, which is, you got bathrooms and you got running water and electricity. And then we took it from there. We did the flooring and all that stuff too. So
did you have to do a lot of re-mortar for the brick and everything? Or?
So actually the brick wasn't a ton of it remortared. And in fact, some of it still needs to be remortared 6.5 years in. We did have the landlord come 1 or 2 times and do it a little bit on these windows that are behind us here, because it does, in the winter months, like let in some cold air.
Sure.
But the brick was actually in pretty good condition. and we just had them like clean it up. It was just a ton of like layers of drywall on it. They ripped it all down. It was in pretty good condition. You'll see up in the front and even back here, there's like still some old things kind of jammed into the wall, like old electrical things and stuff like that. It's all dead at this point, I think. But I think, and then they just sealed up the brick, and we were like good to go, so that it didn't like continue to like crumble and stuff.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
That's such a cool story.
It's pretty wild. It's I think it's one of those things that you were saying earlier, though, where like that's not in your head when you're thinking about, hey, we're going to open a restaurant. It's not in your head that you need to be concerned about the stuff that's jammed into the brick walls that you're trying to expose. And then, you learn for the first time that like, oh, this brick needs to be sealed with a specific sealant so that it doesn't just like crumble over time and just like make your place disgusting and dirty all the time. So it's pretty cool. I do feel like building this restaurant, and then we had another restaurant that we were working on during the pandemic. I feel like I learned a lot of skills, a lot of them from my former business partner and his father and my father, just in terms of like building skills. Like I've been remodeling my own house now, and I would never have been able to do that had I not built a restaurant before. That's where I learned how to do that stuff. So it's cool.
Wow. So your food truck, what is it called? It's not called Marble and Rye.
It's not. It doesn't exist anymore.
Okay.
So it ran, I think it was 2012 maybe until 2015 or 16. It ran for the first year that we were opened here at Marble and Rye without, we like hired staff at that point. Before then it was like a 2, sometimes 3-man team.
It's been gone for 5 years already?
Yeah, so we sold it to what is now Loose Cannon. It's this buddy of mine. His name's Adrian, and he's the executive chef over at the Chop House right now.
Oh, okay.
And it's called Loose Cannon. It's, I think, on the road still, although I don't think he has it out right now. I'm not exactly sure what his plans are with it, to be honest with you, but he's great, and he does a great job with it. It was like a 1968 step van, like real old. We got it out of Utica, New York, and then brought it over to an apartment that my former business partner at the time, Christian, and I lived in. We had a big driveway, and so like for about a year we just remodeled it ourselves and like tore everything out, like started working on the interior, started building some stuff out, and then we met a guy that builds food trucks, and he kind of helped us like get past the finish line. And then we put it on the road, and we ran it, just the two of us, for about 3.5 years, and then started building this place because it was sort of our jumping pad, I guess. It was sort of the idea.
It was called Black Market?
It was called the Black Market, yeah.
And that came before all this happened?
Came before all of this. And prior to that, we had a catering company for like 2 years. It was just like private stuff. We were working full-time jobs still, like during the day. And then, working at restaurants and then doing our own catering gig stuff on the side for like, started with like an ex-girlfriend's aunt that threw a party. And we were like, cool, she'll pay us $1,000.
Right.
And then we'll go buy actual catering equipment, and then we just built it from there. Just every gig you did, you just bought like new legitimate equipment, and you start getting like hot boxes that you can keep stuff in, and just moving. And we had a like commissary kitchen out of like an old church here in the city. Yeah, it was cool, man. Yeah.
Did you want to continue it when you bought this, or was it always an idea of we wanted to establish this and then just let it go?
Kind of stepping stone stuff, I think.
Sure.
Especially like with the catering thing in the beginning. Like when we first started it, I don't even think we knew what food trucks were, And then about 1.5 years, 2 years in, there was like these rumblings of food trucks, and a few food trucks showed up here in Buffalo, and we were like, we could do that. And so we just did enough gigs to save like $8,000, bought this old truck, drove it back from Utica, New York, and just started working on it. Kept doing gigs to like update the truck and pay for that.
So how did you guys get connected then?
Myself and Meg?
Yeah.
Why don't you talk? I've been talking a lot.
You're so good at it. I guess when, there were like rumors that these guys were going to be opening like a brick and mortar, I was working at the Rue Franklin at the time. So I was bartending there one day a week. That was their bartender who had been there for probably 15 years, Greg Courtney. That was like his one night off. So it was just sort of a 1 night a week thing, and serving otherwise. And so I knew that they were staffing here, and actually my boyfriend at the time, Dan Borelli, was one of the first hires here in the kitchen.
Yeah.
And
Nice.
I loved the idea of like sort of he, very talented person. So like the idea of working together sounded
Sure.
really great too. So I sort of jumped at the opportunity to like apply and be a part of, this like exciting new place that was coming together.
Yeah, you've been here since day one with
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
So
Did you start bartending or did you start as serving?
Yeah, I
Okay.
started behind the bar. Actually, Christian, the former, one of the former owner here, former co-owner, I should say, he sort of set up the very first like bar program with some input from the first people hired to be behind the bar. But at the beginning, he kind of like had it all ready to go, and sort of the direction that we were taking was like his vision, and poured everything into it. I tried to spend so much time here and really like make it kind of a little home, and tried to do little specials here and there, and he was open to it, and that just kind of went on from there. And then I feel like a month or two in, you guys decided to give me the title of bar manager. So
That's awesome. So what is that process like now? What is a bar manager?
well, bringing spirits in, deciding what we're going to have behind, like on the back bar, doing the cocktail like menu and program, and sort of changing things up seasonally. We've always had a very small bartending staff, so like scheduling was a little bit of it, but it was more just like, you're gonna be here tomorrow, right? So
remember, none of us knew what we were doing,
Right.
So
yeah, it was my first time doing that. So sort of just like trying to figure out as things went on, and definitely I had to learn a lot about whiskey from Christian, who really knew so much and really loved it. So he taught me a ton and sort of helped. It's like still helps me like maintain what we carry here, having that knowledge. And it was funny. I feel like the first week we were able to do cocktails because there was some reason I can't remember why we couldn't.
So the first week that we opened, our liquor license wasn't ready yet.
Oh.
So you can actually, if you check out like our Facebook from like our opening night where we were doing like soft opening stuff, I think that was a moment where we realized we were sort of doing just soft opening stuff that week because it was friends and family and then like industry people and press and stuff. Our back bar was like empty. It had
like
we
a
put
couple
like
bottles of wine.
Yeah, we put like a couple
Like
bottles of
glasses.
wine and like scattered it, and it's like honestly the whole place kind of looked empty. Like
Yeah, it was-
it's a moment where you realize how much you've built over the years.
Yeah,
you know?
when you look at it now, you would never believe. But the first week we were able to do cocktails, it was just like, I think, after seeing what folks were ordering, what guests were ordering, it was just cocktail after cocktail, and it was like, okay, so I guess we're like a little bit of a cocktail bar too. So that was cool, I guess, just to see people like embracing that gave us like a little I don't know,
Like
it was,
direction?
direction, and like instilled this like enthusiasm to keep pushing forward,
Sure.
and keep doing that, as well as like maintaining like whiskey selection and wine and beer, of course, as well, always. But
Yeah.
I feel like since the beginning it's been very like cocktail focused.
Yeah. Well, because your whiskey selection is very deep and allocated. So how? How are you able to get these allocated stuff? Because I want some.
Well,
because we buy a lot.
yeah, it's basically like if you
kinda how it
buy
works,
a lot,
yeah.
you get
You
to
get like first
get a lot.
shot, And again, for years, Christian was just buying anything he could get his hands on. We did start, as Meg was saying, like the thought about it was that we're a whiskey bar. Like we knew there would be craft cocktails. We knew that was going to be almost something we had to do, and that movement was really going here in Buffalo too. So we were like, okay, that's definitely going to be a part of it, but let's lean on whiskey. So we were just buying anything we could get our hands on, and we were buying good amounts of it too, and figuring out ways that, like, okay, if we buy enough Four Roses, we can get it cheap enough to have it be in our well, and our well can just be Four Roses and stuff like that.
Which
you know,
is
like
huge.
yeah, really like set yourself up in that way. brilliant thought process. And then it's been more recently that I at least have found out, like over the past few years, that like the way that all that allocation stuff works, because that was never my world. My world in this business has always just been the food side, is like the allocation's like, yeah, if you buy like a ton from us, like you're going to get the good stuff. And then it just kind of works its way down from there. So good stuff coming soon.
Yeah, I like that.
So regarding, to your point, where a customer walks in, you've been open a whopping 32 hours, and they're like, so you're new. You're like, I'm new. And they're like, can I have this? Sure. Because we can't say no, first of all, because we don't know what's going on. And then second, we don't have a direction. So we're not going to deny your question. So we'll make that. And then you kind of figure it out that way, which is really cool. But you made a point about leaning towards a whiskey bar. So there's people in the industry that have literally no idea what that means. So what is that? Does that just mean you have a lot of whiskey options, or it's served a certain way and it's not in a cocktail?
I mean, I think it's served the right way. I think it's served, it'll always be served the way that the customer is looking for it to be. But I mean,
Love that.
There's also the sense of, hey, listen, if this guy's trying to order like, the Pappy 12 and he wants it like on the rocks, like with like a bunch of ice, like there may be more of a conversation there with this person to explain to him why we don't necessarily think that's the greatest idea. It'll be, again, a conversation, not us saying no necessarily, but allowing the customers to see the appreciation that you as owners have for what this whiskey is was a big thing for us, I think. Also, yes, building like a big selection, always talking about like, we want to have like the largest selection that we can have, It's a little different than beer because like, you go to some places that they'll boast that they have like 500 bottles of beer, different bottles of beer or something like that. It's like, but I mean, how often is that stuff selling and moving? And so like a lot of it's probably just gross,
Right,
So
super old.
we don't have that with the whiskey. Like it's just going to sit and age, and also keeping an idea of, like what you guys are sipping on right now, this Midnight Summer's Dram. It comes out yearly and it has different acts. So, or Pappy specifically, you have different years of the Pappy that you're hanging on to. Like we have everything back to like 2014, and the 2016 is really, really good stuff, So looking at it that way and allowing the customers to see that's how we care about it, I think is like what we would say a whiskey bar is.
So what type of, do you suggest that like the bartenders get education on the different types of whiskey so they can adequately explain to customers like this is where you might want to go?
I think in all aspects, I think from the beginning it was a big part to with whiskey and anything else, food, other bar items, whatever. The goal was to have the staff really trained and knowledgeable about everything, so that that conversation can take place, like that engagement with the guest, to sort of share some knowledge. And we actually, for a while, we were doing, we'd have little like staff meetings, like tastings, where we'd talk about different whiskeys and spirits and just.
Sweet, you guys hiring or what's up?
Yes.
Yes, you just swing in whenever you want during a staff meeting. It's fine.
That's wild because like being on the customer side of it, if I go in, I mean, I've been drinking, how many whiskey reviews have we done? We've done over 100 whiskey reviews. But like when we go into a bar, we relatively know what we want. Like we're like, I want this, like something similar to this because I want something new, but this is what I'm thinking. When you get somebody to come in that says, my favorite whiskey is Fireball, I want something good. It's like, where do you go from there?
Well, that's when we try to be really like ginger about having something like maybe similar that might be worth trying. Like we don't have that exactly, but this might be something that you'd like,
Yeah, like Jack Fire.
Yeah, right.
Just step up.
Well, also like, I feel like, I don't know, it's such a thing. It can be sometimes, a little, you're sort of putting yourself out there when you're ordering, like maybe you don't know a ton about something like whiskey or whatever. It can be pertaining to anything, but no one wants to be made to feel like they don't like what they drink isn't like what they should be like. If we don't carry, it's not because, to each their own, but like maybe we can talk about trying something new.
Yeah.
And we never want to make a guest feel like they should feel silly for requesting a certain thing.
Right. Which is what I love about what you guys were talking about earlier about how like the best way to enjoy your whiskey is whatever way you enjoy it. Like there's no wrong way to consume it, because from our standpoint too, whiskey's kind of on the rise in Buffalo. People are trying to get out and try it more. And the most intimidating thing is going to a whiskey bar, ordering something, and then the person be like, "You don't want that."
Yeah.
It's like, really? Come on. I'm trying to try something new, and don't shut me down.
Yeah.
Exactly.
100%.
That's cool.
I think that there's a reason that you don't hear of like a Pappy and soda. Like that doesn't
Right.
exist, and I think there's a line that you draw at a certain point. But I think what Meg was saying rings true to what we try and do here always is if we have the ability, it's like, let's have this conversation. Let's talk about what you like, what you dislike, and then we're the professionals to try and help you down that path and figure out like maybe we do something that you like even more than what you've ever had before, or you've never had something like this. Like we want to do that. And I think that's really where like the hospitality kicks in on our end is being able to guide people down that in terms of what it is that we do.
Which brings us to your food.
Yeah.
So, okay. There's a lot to this. However, nothing here is bad.
Oh, thanks.
So there's obviously like a way of quantifying that, whether it's awards or other people's opinions or reviews or whatever else.
Sure.
But first time I came here, true story, I had no idea what to order. And then the waitress couldn't even tell you. This is like 6 months into you guys opening. Asked me, "Do you have any food allergies?" And I was like, "No." And then she goes, "Then literally just pick something because it's all really good." And I was like, "Okay, that's fair."
That's cool.
And I had a conversation. I was on a double date because we left here to go to a play at Shays. Which, if anyone knows me watching this, it's like, did that really just fall out of Mike's word hole? Yes, it did. Okay, I'm trying to be cultured here. So I was getting recommendations from the table, and then it became, you order that, you order this, I got this, and then we'll just share it.
Cool.
And it was such a cool vibe to just kind of experience everybody's dish, even if it was just a little taste. And literally, it was all like Italian, seafood, and then all these different cuisines. And I was like, nothing is like an odd texture or like really fishy or just bad.
Yeah.
How do you do that when... Because I'm thinking back of house stuff. Sure. Like, how do you keep cross-contamination non-existent? How do you keep flavors within the dish in general in a kitchen when you're pumping out? Like you were saying before we recorded, there were 30 options to close the day.
Yeah, like at a close to it, right before this like first shutdown we had this past year and a half. We used to live differently than we live now in terms of who we are and what our menu is. I think that my eyes were opened in a very positive way to like what we're looking for out of having a restaurant. At the end of the day, we're people as well, and we want to be able to maintain some type of work-life balance, which has been the number one thing in my head since coming back from all the shit that we've all dealt with, right? But food's always been just, I don't know, it's been a passion for me in a way that, not to sound lazy, I feel like it sort of comes a little easy to me because I love it so much. And when I say that, I guess I mean, if my wife is an incredibly talented artist, as is Meg, obviously, I can't wrap my head around that type of talent. And, it's one of those things that just comes a lot easier to someone like Megan or, my wife than it ever would be able to for me. But when it comes to like the flavors and stuff that you're talking about, I think one of the more important things is since we've opened, we've always had rotating, but a really solid group of people that aid in a collaborative effort when it comes to the food, the bar, the front of house. It's how we sort of operate. We operate as more of a family than a business. It's important to us, and it's important, I think, for everybody else that's here because, you don't want to be doing a job that you don't want to be doing. So if you can change that in somebody and make sure that they're aware that, like, this is, I'm going to treat you a little less like an employee and a little bit more like my family, that's a big reason I got into this industry to begin with. It's I think at the end of the day, the reason that I am in this industry is building that like work family, right? Mm-hmm. So we've always had an extremely talented group of chefs up until, this past year. I find myself now back there. It's myself and one other guy, Dylan, who's, been my right-hand man for a little while at this point. And then, I have an incredible pastry chef as well, who she also works at Bread Hive. So this is, she has 2 jobs. So she's here, 2, sometimes 3 days a week, not for service. She just comes in and like makes the desserts and stuff for us. And then it's me and one other dude back there. And then that's it. We talked earlier about staffing issues and stuff, but I think that I've always allowed the seasons in terms of working locally, what I have available dictate what it is that we're doing here.
Sure.
Again, not to sound lazy, but it's a little bit easier for me to be able to wrap my head around the idea that like I'm working with this farm, and when I can't get spaghetti squash anymore, the spaghetti squash dish comes off the menu, and we do something different with the stuff we do have available. It's how I like to cook, and it's the thing that sort of like directs me and drives me. Now, those ingredients specifically aren't saying do this, Indian dish or do this Italian dish or this Mediterranean dish. That's where the fun and the creativity comes in. But what I have available to me at that time, coming from these farms, that's what determines like essentially the path I'm going to walk down.
So, logistically speaking, there has to be. I mean, there is, right? There's restaurants that use Restaurant Depot,
of course,
hence the name.
Yeah.
Is that the difference in like taste and just overall quality?
Yeah, I mean, I'll never say that's
you're using
not.
a farm.
Yeah, I would never say that that's not. That's something that for forever, it's always been, the pork that we serve here, the vegetables that we serve here, the carrots, every little thing that's coming from a local farm, it doesn't taste like what you would get at the grocery store. It's better. It's more robust. It's
probably healthier.
It's healthier. I mean, it's cleaner. There's no, these guys, my farmers, men and women alike, like, they're driving here to drop stuff off once a week, and they're coming from like 20 minutes from here, It couldn't be fresher a lot of the time. When it comes to the proteins and stuff too, specifically, close farms that we've worked with for years, Always Something Farm and Herba Verde and Plato Dale, their stuff is just on a different level. The ground beef that we get in is so much different than the ground beef that you go and just get from Wegmans. So that does elevate stuff. And then I think the other side of it is your creativity and your ability to be able to season things properly, put these flavors together, the technique of what it is that you're doing. We find ourselves falling into, higher end French cuisine sometimes with pâté en croûte and things like that, and, chicken liver mousses. And then, we're also really well known for cooking a great double smash burger and Detroit style pizzas. So, but the quality of the ingredients is always important. So, I'm obviously not buying, really shitty pepperoni for our pizza. We're buying Cup and Char Battistoni pepperoni. It's made here in Buffalo. Yeah. Like it doesn't get any better than that. So that's always been an important thing as well.
When you work with a farm and you're trying to figure out what farm you want to use, how do you do it? Like, are you walking the farm to see if this is a farm that you want to deal with? Are you asking them to bring in ground beef from each farm to see like if you want to try?
Yeah. So they'll sample us for sure.
That's I didn't know that.
Yeah,
I don't know what I thought happened.
They'll come in.
I didn't think it was that.
If I meet a new farmer, I've had farmers come in and like they'll bring me like a couple of rabbits or. Obviously slaughtered and butchered. I'm sorry.
Here you go.
I can't handle that side of it. I'll do the full animal breakdown stuff, but I can't do the slaughtering side.
It's fascinating, man.
But so that kind of stuff, and for a very long time, for probably the better part of 5 of the 6.5 years we've been open, another part of our program was whole animal butchery, getting in whole hogs, head and all, whole lamb. It's always been whole chickens, things like that, and working on a butchering side to not only improve our skills as a team and as a kitchen, but learn from each other in it and be able to utilize tons of stuff. When you have a whole hog and it's just a whole hog of raw meat, you have to learn how to break it down. You have to learn how to butcher it, and then you learn how to make bacon, and then you get a grinder and you learn how to make great sausages. Like those new techniques are able and start to spring up because you're like, well, I got this whole thing, and it's not just, hey, I ordered 50 pounds of ground pork. It's like, I have this pork, I need ground pork, I need to butcher this and then grind the pork and then make the sausages kind of deal, you know? So it's just like learning, you know?
When did, obviously, because that's what this is, question based, when did the state switch from butcher block to stainless? Because that's a state law, right? You can't use a butcher block anymore. You have to cut meat on stainless steel.
So, I mean, the reasoning behind that is pretty obvious and smart, is that stainless steel is easily cleaned, and then, like, you know, shit just soaks into wood and it's going to get gross and be gross for forever. I don't know when that changed. I gotta imagine that maybe in this past decade they made that like a thing, because like I'm sure you still go into old butcher shops that are 100 120 years old and they're still using butcher blocks left and right.
They have to.
You know what I mean? So either like there's some type of grandfathering in, or maybe it's something that they just stated and they don't enforce, but
it's
specifically
like a code.
Specifically when that happened, I'm not sure. But yeah, I mean, we don't have a huge kitchen here either. So, you know, I've gotten in hogs that are 350 pounds and they come in whole. Like, I mean, the head is off, but they're whole and they're big. I mean, I've gotten insides of veal before that are like 7 feet long. So it's like, I'll have to come in on a day when nothing else is happening here so that I can just take over the entire kitchen and like 4 tables to like butcher this stuff, you know?
The reason I ask is because of the knife. Like, you're just destroying your blades on stainless steel, right?
Yeah, I mean, if you're a butcher shop, maybe that doesn't matter because you're going through the process of probably constantly sharpening and or having like a pretty regular knife service like Pavanelli come in and switch your knives out. So like that's a company that we utilize here, which isn't like another industry background thing. I actually worked for them when I was starting our food truck for like a year, delivering knives. So what they do is like once a week, they just come in, they drop off a bunch of knives for us. We beat the hell out of them. They come in, swap them out with fresh ones, and then they take them back and sharpen them, and then they come back the next week. So you're kind of working with like sharp knives most of the time.
How do you know this if you're not in the industry?
It's one of those, hey, I'm opening a restaurant, I need to learn this shit kind of moment, you know?
Have to do
awesome.
it to know, yeah.
But yeah, so like... So yeah, I would imagine that you're probably, you know, screwing your knives up a lot more than if you're just obviously working with soft wood, probably putting down cutting boards and shit like that, and then just taking them off and cleaning them afterwards. Like that's what I do here is I just lay out, you know, 4 or 5 cutting boards as large as the tables that we're on right now, and just lay them out and then drop the whole thing, and then you just start working and just start breaking it down. You know?
That's fascinating.
It's cool stuff. If I ever get I mean, again, our program's changed a bit, but if I ever get another whole animal in again, which I can't stay away from for forever, and you know, I've got other things I want to do. Maybe I'll give you guys a call and you can come in and like video like the process of it. It's very, very cool. Yeah, it's neat.
That's fascinating. I don't understand, but like your menu, when you said that you went from 30 kind of and you brought it down, it kind of goes back to our conversation about the whiskey and how you're forcing people to try something new. Because if you have the same 30 items on your menu, people aren't going to want to deviate from their favorite dish. Mm-hmm. But if you're doing more like seasonal and what the farmers have, it forces them to try something new that maybe that, like you said, the butternut squash isn't available right now, and that's my favorite dish. Yep. Now I have to do this whole hog.
Exactly.
It also helps the customers too. Like, can I have a menu?
Yeah.
It's like, here you go. And it's like a little notepad.
For sure.
And then it's 6 things.
Yep.
You know, like you pick.
Yep.
And that's it. That's all you get.
Couldn't agree more. You know, the way that we were, and we still kind of are just in a smaller way now, is we had like a staple house menu that had, you know, 3 salads, 2 pastas, a steak, a chicken, a burger, trying to like satisfy any and all people.
Sure.
And then inevitably you always still get the people that are like, well, what do you mean you don't have tacos? Like, we came here for the spaghetti, but I want tacos right now. It's like, well, we don't have both of those things. I'm sorry. You know, that's always going to happen. But we had like a regular full menu that it was stuff we had all the time. So from a kitchen perspective, when it comes to prep, it's like, those are the things that we can't run out of. We prep this stuff. We have it all the time, right? And then we have a features menu, working with these farms and stuff. Now, the regular menu is mapped and modeled in a way where everything that's on it is more or less seasonal. If you need to like rotate the greens in the salad or something like that, we would rotate the greens because they're not necessarily available all year round, right? But that kind of is a staple, doesn't change. Beef pastas, we're always going to have beef in house, things like that. And then the feature menu is the one where it's like a dozen items, and that's changing sometimes. I mean, we were at moments in the past where it would change twice a week. And that's problematic for a customer base too, because when you're posting something on social media and someone's like, that looks awesome, I want that, and they come in 4 days later and we don't have it anymore because we changed it. So it's always like a balancing act with that as well.
How often do you change your menus now, or does it still vary?
Well, yeah, the new way that we're doing things, I feel like, we have, for the bar and the kitchen, I would say, like pretty much staple things that we just are we know.
We know we're good at.
We know we're good at. We know that guests enjoy, and the menus that we have will sort of not stray too far.
Okay.
And then it's like we do seasonal things in addition to that. Mm-hmm. So it's a little more consistent, I would say. Can I say that? And in like a positive way, like you kind of know what you're getting into, but you also know that you'll have some, seasonal offerings, some new things as well.
Sure.
But so, the seasonal things change, weekly.
Yeah, weekly. I think
ends.
Kind of at a point with the food right now where like we have our regular menu. It's got 4 different Detroit style pizzas on it. It's got 2 different kinds of salads, a couple of different small plates, a house-made pasta, which we've always carried, and then our burger as well. So, 10, 11 items on that menu. And then we try to run 2 feature food items, and I'm trying to get into a mode where like it's around for 2 weeks and then I change it. And again, sometimes that's, we were running a pizza this past week that had wild foraged maitake mushrooms on it that like a chef buddy of mine, actually the guy that bought my food truck, Adrian, that I was talking about earlier, he's a mushroom forager and he found them, and he found like 60 pounds of them, and I got a ton of them from him, but the pizza was hot. So we ran it for like 3 days and we sold out on Saturday night, which is great. But there's always that aspect of like, I might not be able to get that next week. So I might not be able to keep it around. I am getting them. So anybody, I don't know when this is going to go live, but anybody listening, come in and get it. It's really good. But yeah, there's always that little bit of an aspect, but trying to stick to like a 2-week timeline on stuff and then, change it as we see fit or as the season makes us.
Have you dabbled in like the game meat, like venison or bison? Because that's kind of something you can have for a little bit.
Definitely. Not a ton. There's a really hard, it's really hard for restaurants to source local venison, and it's illegal for me to like get it from a buddy of mine that hunts and serve it here, or like go kill it myself and serve it here.
You can't?
No,
as the owner?
No, I can't. No.
Why?
Because it needs to be slaughtered like in a proper facility, and it needs to be like USDA licensed. And I think there's other reasons. I guess I probably could go kill it myself and then bring it and get it slaughtered on my own.
Yeah.
But like we also have like a pretty big problem in our region, kind of due to deer, like a little bit, in terms of just processing in general. Even like my farmers, there's times where they can't get processing dates for like 3, 4, 5 months. There's only a handful of processors that are left in this area, and a lot of my farmers even go down to like just over the border into Pennsylvania, because there's a processor there where they can get in and get slots a little easier. And we're talking about like farm raised animals that they're planning these dates out months in advance. It's sort of a lost trade, and it's sort of like a lost art that's like slipping away, is like these families who've had these processing centers for years. But another issue we run into is because our deer population is so huge in this area and there's so many people that hunt, a lot of the processors will not process anything but deer for like 6 solid months. So you can't even get a slot. So
makes sense.
It's like this
sucks, though.
It's in our food industry, like it is our local food industry, it is a weak link in our chain that could potentially break. Some of my close farmer friends, Mike Parcott, who owns Always Something Farm that's out of like the Darien area, he since the day I met him, has always been aware of this issue and trying to, as a hog farmer, better it as much as he can. And he's at some point, if not sooner than later, probably just going to open up his own processing facility and just be like, I'm not going to mess around with that anymore. Like, someone needs to do this, I'm just going to do it, So
that's fascinating.
See, the things you uncover by being curious.
Yeah.
Right?
It's true. But yeah, so all to that, I haven't really dabbled a ton in the game stuff. And again, I think part of that too is, lamb, if you want to consider that like game. I know that people say that it's gamey, but one of our very, very close farms that we work with, Stillwater Farm out of Boston, New York, they're a lamb farm. So we've had whole lamb in here pretty regularly, and we always utilize it at these farm dinners that we do out there. But because we stay so local, there's no one raising and processing bison in this region specifically. So I haven't done a ton with it, but I got some buddies that hunt, and I've made a bunch of venison sausages and jerky and stuff like that in the past for sure.
It makes sense, just because, to your point, almost everybody hunts in Western New York.
Yeah, right.
Because it's so easy. You just sit there for a couple hours, and 9 are going to show up if you do your work in the off season. But
100%.
It's really cool to hear this back end stuff because it's never discussed.
Well, how often do you see venison on a menu at a restaurant?
Twice.
Yeah, never.
It's not super often, right?
No.
Because it's hard for our restaurants to access that. With the amount that there is here, it's a really interesting thing that it's hard for us to get it because it's not coming. People are hunting and processing for themselves. It's not. There's no one here that's I'm doing this for your industry. So it's hard for us to get our hands on it and be able to legally sell it.
Yeah, there was a restaurant in East Aurora, and every month they have a different meat, and that you can have as a burger. And the one was ostrich meat.
Yeah,
but obviously that's not a local restaurant.
Yeah,
and that's what I was like. Why not venison?
Yeah.
And then the waitress laughed, and she's like, I mean, for one, we had that 6 months ago, but 2, everybody here hunts, and 3, why wouldn't you want to try ostrich?
Yeah, for sure. I hear it, man.
I get it. That's fair. I'll just shut up now. I'm just going to stare at my fries.
And to be honest, if you do see venison on a menu here in the city, I mean, I would bet that it probably is not local. It probably came from a larger food supplier like a Curtsy or maybe even a J.H. Dobman that's a local place, and they're a meat supply company, or a Schneider's who also does meat, and they have their own meat cutting rooms and stuff. But because they're licensed to be able to break all this stuff down in the proper manner in clean rooms and stuff, they're probably shipping it in, and it's not coming locally. So I would say if you do find venison, it also probably isn't local on a menu. So it's like a weird loophole in our industry, man.
That's awesome.
Uncovered here first on Buffalo.
Right.
So do you get any not to get too into the weeds of it, but are there any tax breaks or government kickbacks or anything for staying local and using farms? No. Not
No.
really? Okay.
You just spend more money because it's, a small family that is selling, so I don't want to say you spend more money and make it sound like a bad thing. I mean, I think, again, to go back to what we were saying before about the quality of what we're bringing in being so far beyond, you get what you're paying for, no question. And you work with them enough, you get to know them enough, you buy enough stuff. You start getting little price breaks here and there and stuff, I usually tend to buy cases of kale from them rather than just getting in a half a case or something, because it helps them, and you get to, at least for myself, going out, seeing these farms, meeting these families, getting close with these families. I mean, it's literally a lot of the time. Yeah. It's 4 people, a guy, his wife, and 3 kids, who the oldest one is 13 years old, running this farm.
Right.
It is their means of income. So it's interesting and cool at the same time to see that you supply them with that. Moriarty's Meats, if you guys are familiar, it's a butcher shop here in the city. Great guy, Tom Moriarty, that owns it, works with a ton of local farms. And every year, I think once a year, he's been open for 3 years now, and I think once a year he posts how much money he gave personally to local farms from buying their stuff, bringing it in, butchering it down. I mean, it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's really cool to see that small effect so directly. You know, very, very neat stuff.
Yeah, because the money's going 15 minutes away.
Exactly.
That's amazing.
It's cool.
Yeah.
It's very cool.
Yeah, farm to table you can't beat.
Yeah.
And that's everyone's gripe is trying to keep up with Europeans' food standard because it's so clean. Like
Yeah.
the food is so good. So when you find a place here that is literally on the same level, it's just like I want to go, but then I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to afford it. And then it's just like you just go, and then you basically just start growing your own plants to try to keep up. But then you just realize I can't cook for shit.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to go back to marble and rye. I mean, that's pretty much what happens every time.
I don't know. You kind of know you're doing a good thing.
Yeah.
And like that all goes to good places. I don't know.
Sure.
Keeping it local is like,
It's always been a big passion of ours, and like part of our model is like
You don't
stay
market yourself
local.
though like that.
I mean,
at
we
all.
used to a lot more.
Okay.
Even to a point where, like, on our wall, we had like a list of like our local farms that we used all the time. I've always been against the idea of a menu reading where every single ingredient that you're talking about on your menu descriptor has a farm's name in front of it. Now, we always had a blurb at the bottom of our menu that talks about the farms. On our website, there's a long thing that's like very well designed that talks about our farms and has contact to them. But it's probably a personal thing that I have, but I was going to say this just a minute ago. Isn't it a weird thing when it comes to the price of it, like that we find ourselves at a spot where something that came from 15 minutes down the road, to say what you were saying earlier, is sometimes far more expensive than something that can be shipped across the country to you
disgusting.
on a truck. It's a bad spot.
I hate it.
It's a bad spot,
Yeah.
you know? And that's, you know, unfortunately, you know, it's really since like the 40s, like the US, and the reason that we're not on this European food standard is like they don't have the factory farming that we have here. Like we supply the other parts of the world with what we do when it comes to our farming here. Now, I think it's solved a lot of good things. I think that it's helped a lot of like hunger issues, and I think it's allowed lower income families to have access to stuff for a cheaper price. But it's changed how this country looks at and thinks about food, which is, and every generation we move past it, it becomes that's all they know. I mean, all we know is pretty much like Tyson chicken farms and stuff, you know? So again, to loop back to it, the fact that something is more expensive when it just came from 15 minutes down the road, it's a little scary, I think, you know? But that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So we just try and promote that and push that as much as we can. And when it comes to like not being super upfront about that, I've always had, again, and this is back to me saying the personal thing, like I've always had a weird thing in my head that like I feel like I shouldn't have to tell people that.
Absolutely.
You know, like I feel like food is like that's how I want to look at it anyways, is like it is who we are and it is how I operate, and I feel like I shouldn't have to tell people that all the time.
yeah, it's
so.
like your standard. At
It's
this
just who
point.
we are.
You should know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's part of the brand.
Yeah.
And that's when we were talking at the mocktail event. It was the same thing where I go, you can come here in a suit and feel at home, or you can wear just like a nice comfortable sweater and a pair of jeans and still be okay.
Oh yeah, man.
I mean, that's something we, even, you know, some recent changes that we've made have been to, you know, soften things up, make it feel a little cozier, a little more like lounge, like you're welcome to like gather and stay and sit and feel at home, like no matter what you wear. Like it's not about that at all.
Yeah.
It's just a place for you to like come and be who you are.
Some of my favorite things that restaurants are doing, like you guys, is you have your like uniform seating area, but then you get back to this area where it's like, yeah, here's a bench, here's some chairs, here's a booth back there, here's a high top. Like it's more of a what you would see in someone's basement.
Yeah.
And that is
so
so
funny.
happy. Like I can look at that and it looks like
That's so funny.
yeah, it looks like a bookshelf, and like you have your bookshelf back there. Like this looks like someone's basement, and it just makes you feel at home.
Yeah.
That's amazing that you said that. That
what
was
we're going
actually a
for.
little bit of a vibe. Like
That's sweet.
Sort of combining like a few different styles and sort of like a vintage feel. Some places like a, you know, a place that hasn't been updated in a little while, and it just, I mean, that's sort of homey
We
in a
updated
way.
to make it look like it wasn't updated.
Yeah,
I love it.
but yeah, that's cool. It's supposed to, you know, not. It's supposed to not be intimidating or.
Which,
but
I mean, you guys did a
comfortable.
great job.
Yeah, you
This
did.
is awesome.
Appreciate that. I mean, that's also how we're trying to approach like who we are now in terms of pushing more of a bar and lounge that also has awesome food instead of a full service restaurant. You know, you look back from having a year and a half to be able to look back on everything that happened, and there's moments of how did the menu get to 30 items? This is never what I intended. And there's moments of this isn't what I want to be, like this direction we're heading in isn't the direction I want to be heading in anymore. And I think that there's been a lot of moments of us looking at what we were going through and how much we were all working and how we spent every waking moment here and saying like, that's not how we want this to be. Like, listen, this is ours. Like, this is gonna be what we want this to be. So we decided to, like I said, focus more bar lounge. We have now arguably one of the better pizzas in the city. A pizza became part of our program. It's always been my favorite food ever. And even when we had a wood-fired oven in here, I said, we'll never do pizzas because if we're going to do pizzas out of it, that's all we're going to do out of it. So we did everything else out of it instead. And I was maybe probably a little nervous to be like, this is my pizza.
Right.
Like, I'm still trying to figure out all the other things that are going on in this place, let alone being like, yeah, this is our pizza. It's a competitor in the city. It's like, no, the pizza's shit. Like, no one wants it, you know? But now, you know, we're 6.5, and I had a year to test a bunch of stuff out. And now we do this style of pizza that I think is like, personally my favorite in terms of like how it bakes and how it cooks and how it tastes after and everything like that. But, you know, keeping some nostalgic stuff too and just being even a little more relaxed.
Yeah.
Like, we'll always stay local. You'll be able to come in and maybe get, you know, I ran chicken liver pate a few weeks ago. Like, I always have those fun little flexy moments still, but we're a lot more relaxed. And, you know, having a 1-year-old daughter at home, it makes it a lot easier for me to be like, I don't feel like I want to work right now.
Right.
I think I just want to go home, you know?
Yeah,
So.
I mean, we can talk on and on about how terrible this last year was, but the silver lining that comes out of that is people have had the time to reflect on what they've been doing and be able to adapt to how they want to be doing things going forward.
Big time.
The 30 menu items, I would know that if I was running a restaurant and I first started out, I would be like, oh, you wanted this, let me put it on the menu for next time. You wanted this, let me put it on the menu for next time. And you just
that's
start
very
growing this
tempting.
menu.
100%.
So I commend you guys for being like, no, we're
100%.
going backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're going to put out something that we love, and you're going to like it, and you're going to come back.
Yeah, isn't that like how you develop like a brand in terms of who you are? Like, I feel like we were talking in the very beginning of this about, you know, when we first opened, like finding our identity and being open and still like growing and finding our identity. And I think we always did and probably always will do that to a certain extent. But this was like refinding who we initially really wanted to be 6.5 years ago, and decided for one reason or another that you know, this is the certain direction we're going to take. It's been cathartic, to say the least. It's been like I just feel like there's a weight off my shoulders because we're finally able to just be like, yeah, this is who we are. This is what we do.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yeah.
so
It's a more comfortable place to be in, and you know, we can take the things that we've learned from all of our experiences and just know how not to burn yourself out, and know what it is that we enjoy doing, that we see that our guests enjoy getting from us.
Sure.
And I think that's sort of, you know, in terms of the bar, how it's sort of become that our cocktails have remained a focus, and just sort of we've streamlined the way that they are, like the behind the scenes work goes into it.
Sure.
And just sort of nailed down how we like doing things. And it's more of a I don't know, we at the same, you know, as per what Mike was saying, like when we first closed down, we had just so many things that we were trying to do, like 3 different like tea-based beverages, like each with like different ingredients, and it became sort of like a mess back there. And now it just feels like a very clear, like intentional place that we're in.
yeah.
That's
And
awesome.
It's like definitely from just like taking what we've learned, or like thinking about things that we should have realized, and
Sure.
going from there. So
That's awesome.
I mean, you don't stop grinding at a certain point, before everything happened and the shutdown took place. Like, you're just grinding like almost every day for like 5 straight years. Like, you don't have the time to look back and be like, my menu has 400 different ingredients that we have to keep inventory on and order on a regular basis. Like, this is fucking nuts.
That's so stressful.
Like, no wonder I'm working all the fucking time. No wonder we're still working all the time, no question. But it's like, you could never, how could you ever step away and hand that off to another employee and be like, here you go, good luck. Like, as an owner, you're going to step up and do it no matter how bad it is. But you also built it that way. So it's like, I can't have someone's responsibility be that. They're going to be like, this is madness. I can't keep up with this shit,
absolutely.
So,
and then you burn out.
And then you just burn out,
do any of it anymore.
So I think that's another big part of putting these systems in place is putting systems in place where people are cross-trained in a way where, like, no one person is so important that if they're not there, the whole system falls apart.
We've all been in that position too. Where,
absolutely.
Like, the guy that knows everything, or the girl that's been here for 30 years and she's a safe, or like the vault of all the information.
Yeah.
Like, who do we call? Only that person knows. It's like, what? This is terrible.
Yeah. So we're trying to do more of that, and it's a constant thing. We're doing that every day. But I think to touch on that again, it's like, if Meg was, you hit a weird sense in this industry sometimes where, like, you feel like you can't get sick, right? Yeah. Like if you were to get sick, like if I got sick for a couple of years when we were open here, it's like if I got sick and couldn't come to work for a week, it's like, you guys are going to come into dinner one night and there's going to be 0 features. Right. There's going to be the regular menu and nothing else because I was the sole person in control of all that stuff. My team was, obviously brainstorming, helping prep, things like that, but it wasn't to a point where that could seamlessly just continue happening. I have had moments like that, no question, where we were able to do that with a big, robust team of like really talented people back there. But, there were also times where it was like, I can't afford to not be there because it just won't happen if I'm not. And so I guess trying to strip that away now as much as possible, where it's like, it's okay to like be tired or take a vacation with your wife or, go out of town for the weekend and say, hey, I can't be here Friday and Saturday. It's like, cool. The system's in place. Like, we all know what to do. It's going to keep moving. It's going to keep going,
Yeah, that's how you are willing to come back to it. Like, the industry lost so many people when we had to stop and kind of think about what we wanted out of life. And, those that stayed, it's like the only way, you can is if you have that life balance. And I know Mike's like huge on that going forward, just like feeling like you have a life outside of it.
Sure.
Yeah.
So where are we located? I know that we probably should touch on this right off the top, but what's the address?
So this is 112 Genesee Street. We're downtown Buffalo. We sit between Oak and Ellicott Street, around the corner from Toutant, pretty much next door to Casa Azul, kitty corner to Eddie Brady's. It's kind of wild that I own a place here because like I grew up going to Eddie Brady's. Like Eddie Brady's was like ingrained in like my high school culture kind of thing, and like my older brother was a basketball player. They would host the Gus Macker directly outside of Eddie Brady's. So like I almost grew up in Eddie Brady's, and now Pat and Eddie are like peers of mine because they're right across the street. We help each other out when we can. We have like a work and peer relationship, which is wild because I was legit going there in like 1996. It's crazy to think about. So.
And then what's your social media?
So we are at Marble and Rye, ANDRYE, across the board, and marbleandrye.net is our website because I couldn't get the .com, which always has always been a bit of a thorn in my side, but whatever. So Marble and Rye, again, ANDRYE.net.
And you said that you post your menu, your specials, and try to go for at least 2 weeks on them?
Yeah, we try and go for 2 weeks on them. If you go to our website, again, marbleandrye.net, there's a whole online ordering thing, which, again, also sprung from what we dealt with this past year, and also is something we continue to do. It's a big, robust online ordering system that, you can jump in. We always update that with our features if our features are able to be, taken out to go. And another big reason that we did like the pizza and burger thing, because it's like, who knows, man? Like if we ever got shut down again, I could sling pizzas like crazy. Like it's a great to go thing.
Yeah.
So it's another reason we're kind of like situated in that spot.
Like you were saying, you can't really take octopus home.
No, yeah, like I hate like making someone a fresh pasta. Like we just made the pasta fresh that day. It takes 30 seconds to cook, and then I make it and mix it in a sauce, and then it sits in their car for a half an hour on their way home. I'm like, man, I really don't love doing that, you know?
Well, guys, did we touch or do we miss anything that you want to touch on? It's been an hour. We could continue talking for so much longer.
Oh, maybe we got to do another one of these at some point, like
absolutely.
a revisit in the future or
Well,
something.
when we come and watch you slaughter
Yeah,
something.
come watch me slaughter something. No, not slaughter, butcher.
Butcher. Yeah, there's a vast difference.
Distinct
I
difference.
can't do the slaughter part.
Oh,
legally and like morally.
Well, thank you guys. I love this place before talking with you, and I can say that I love it even more now. Like
Very
this,
cool.
you guys are awesome. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Yeah, this is a
it's
blast.
really cool.
This is so much fun.
Yeah. So thank you, everybody. Come down, check them out, Marble and Rye. They said their social media and their website, and try them out because you're going to be pleasantly surprised. So thank you guys.
Thank you.
so
Thank you.
much.